You won't believe how one comment from a respected NBA insider has suddenly turned one of the league's strongest partnerships into the center of trade speculation. What looked impossible just days ago is now fueling one of the biggest debates around the Boston Celtics, and the name at the heart of it isn't just Jaylen Brown. It's Jayson Tatum, as Boston tries to figure out its future after another frustrating setback and Tatum's devastating injury. Questions that once sounded ridiculous are suddenly being asked everywhere. Could the Celtics actually consider moving Brown, and would Tatum's opinion carry more weight than anyone expected? The conversation exploded after longtime NBA insider Brian Windhorst shared a fascinating perspective that immediately grabbed the attention of fans around the league. During a discussion about Boston's uncertain direction, Windhorst suggested that if the organization ever reached the point of trading Brown, it would be hard to imagine that decision happening without Tatum being fully on board. That wasn't presented as inside confirmation of a trade. Instead, it was a revealing look at how influential franchise superstars have become in today's NBA and how much trust organizations place in their cornerstone players. The moment those words reached social media, reactions poured in from every direction. Some fans argued that Tatum has earned that level of influence after years of carrying Boston deep into the playoffs, while others questioned whether any player should have that much power over front office decisions. The debate quickly shifted from Brown's future to the balance between player influence and executive authority. And that's where things became even more interesting. Boston isn't entering a normal offseason. Financial pressure is growing because of the league's new collective bargaining rules. The payroll continues to climb, and difficult choices may eventually become unavoidable. Every contender around the NBA is now dealing with harsher restrictions once they cross certain salary thresholds, making it much harder to keep expensive championship-caliber rosters together. That reality has opened the door for speculation surrounding nearly every high-priced star in the league, even those who helped deliver a championship. Brown's massive contract naturally places him in countless hypothetical trade conversations, not because the Celtics have announced any desire to move him, but because rival executives understand how challenging roster construction has become under the new financial landscape. Still, there's an enormous difference between outside speculation and an actual organizational plan. Boston has repeatedly expressed confidence in its championship core, and there has been no official indication that Brown is actively being shopped. Yet rumors thrive whenever uncertainty appears, especially when a franchise suddenly faces injuries, salary pressure, and expectations of competing for another title. Brown himself has remained focused throughout the noise. Since arriving in Boston, he has consistently developed his game, transformed into an all-NBA talent, and proven capable of taking over the biggest moments on basketball's brightest stage. His Finals MVP performance cemented his reputation as far more than just a secondary option, giving supporters another reason to believe he remains untouchable despite constant outside speculation. But what happened next added another fascinating layer to the conversation. Analysts began asking whether Windhorst's statement revealed something deeper about the Celtics' internal structure rather than any specific trade possibility. Modern NBA franchises increasingly collaborate with superstar players when making franchise-altering decisions, especially when those players represent the long-term face of the organization. That doesn't necessarily mean Tatum controls the front office. It means his perspective could be highly valued before any blockbuster move involving his longtime teammate is seriously considered. After all, Tatum and Brown have spent years growing together through playoff heartbreak, criticism, personal development, and eventually championship success. Their partnership has survived roster changes, coaching transitions, and relentless media pressure that repeatedly predicted they couldn't coexist. Instead of breaking apart, they answered critics by reaching the top of the basketball world. That history makes the current speculation even more emotional for Celtics fans because this isn't simply about contracts or salary figures. It's about the identity of an entire franchise. Yet the biggest twist was still coming because another growing theory began spreading among league observers, and it could completely change the way everyone interprets Windhorst's explosive suggestion. That new theory centered on one simple question. If Boston eventually reaches a crossroads, who becomes the franchise's unquestioned foundation? For most observers, the answer starts with Jayson Tatum, not because Jaylen Brown lacks elite talent, but because Tatum has long been viewed as the organization's centerpiece from both a basketball and business perspective. That distinction is exactly why Windhorst's comment resonated so strongly across the NBA. It wasn't framed as evidence that a deal is secretly being negotiated. It highlighted how front offices typically protect the relationship with the player they expect to build around for the next decade. As the discussion spread, former executives and analysts pointed to similar situations around the league where superstar opinions quietly influenced major roster decisions. Those conversations rarely happen in public, yet everyone understands they exist behind closed doors. The general manager ultimately signs off on transactions, ownership gives final approval, and coaches prepare the team. But keeping a franchise player informed has become an increasingly common part of modern NBA operations. That reality immediately divided basketball fans into two passionate camps. One side insisted this is simply how championship organizations operate in today's player-driven era, while the other argued that no individual, regardless of status, should have indirect influence over another star's future. Neither viewpoint settled the debate. Instead, the disagreement only fueled even more speculation. Meanwhile, Boston's front office remains focused on a far more immediate challenge than internet rumors. Recovering from a season that ended with enormous expectations still left unfulfilled, and preparing for a year that could begin without Tatum fully healthy. His injury changed the timeline for everything surrounding the Celtics. A team that expected to chase another title now faces difficult questions about patience, roster flexibility, and long-term planning. That shift has encouraged rival fan bases to dream about blockbuster trades involving Boston's biggest names, even without concrete evidence that the organization is considering such moves. Brown's situation becomes especially fascinating because of how dramatically public opinion has changed over the years. There was a time when critics questioned whether he could become a reliable all-star, then whether he deserved a maximum contract, and later, whether he could thrive under playoff pressure. He answered each challenge with another leap in performance. By the time Boston captured its championship, many of those same critics were praising his leadership, two-way dominance, and ability to deliver when the pressure reached its highest point. That transformation makes any trade conversation feel far more complicated than simply comparing statistics or contracts. Brown represents years of development, loyalty, and investment from both the franchise and the fan base. Trading a player with that history would never be viewed as an ordinary basketball decision. It would reshape the emotional connection many supporters have built with this core. Even so, the NBA has repeatedly shown that difficult financial realities can force organizations into choices they once considered impossible. Championship teams often stay together for only a limited window before salary restrictions begin testing every long-term plan. Boston is now approaching one of those challenging moments. The arrival of stricter payroll penalties means every contract carries greater significance than ever before. Teams that ignore those consequences risk limiting their flexibility for years, making careful planning just as important as talent evaluation. That's why league insiders continue discussing possibilities instead of guarantees. Every scenario remains hypothetical until Boston's decision-makers determine the direction they want to pursue. And so far, there has been no official indication that Brown is on the trade block. Still, speculation rarely waits for confirmation. Every interview, every insider comment, and every front office move becomes another puzzle piece that fans try to assemble into a complete picture. Windhorst's observation became one of those puzzle pieces because it touched on something larger than a single player: the growing influence of franchise superstars in shaping organizational decisions. Whether people agree with that trend or not, it has become an undeniable part of today's NBA landscape. As the offseason continues, every move Boston makes will be examined through that lens, from free agency decisions to roster adjustments and long-term financial planning. The franchise knows the pressure hasn't disappeared. If anything, it has only intensified. And while the spotlight remains fixed on Brown and Tatum, another major question is quietly developing behind the scenes, one that could have an even bigger impact on the Celtics' future than any trade rumor currently making headlines. That question revolves around timing, because in the NBA, making the right move too early can destroy a championship window, while making it too late can leave a franchise trapped with limited options. Boston's leadership understands that better than almost anyone after spending years patiently building a roster capable of winning at the highest level. Every major decision from this point forward carries enormous consequences. If the organization chooses continuity, it must believe the current core can overcome injuries and financial obstacles once everyone is healthy again. If it chooses change, the return would need to be significant enough to justify breaking apart one of the league's most successful partnerships. That's why executives around the NBA are watching Boston so closely. Whenever an elite team faces uncertainty, rival front offices naturally begin preparing for every possible scenario, even if those scenarios never materialize. It isn't unusual for teams to make exploratory phone calls during the offseason. Those conversations happen constantly across the league without leading to actual trades. For Celtics fans, however, every rumor feels larger because Brown and Tatum have become symbols of an entire era of Boston basketball. They entered the league as young prospects, endured painful playoff exits, faced relentless criticism, and steadily matured into championship-caliber stars. Few duos have spent so many years growing together while remaining under such intense national scrutiny. That shared history makes outside speculation especially emotional. Many supporters believe the partnership deserves every opportunity to compete again once the roster is fully healthy, arguing that one difficult stretch shouldn't erase everything the group has accomplished. Others take a different view. They believe successful organizations must always think several years ahead instead of becoming attached to familiar faces. According to that perspective, every player has a value if the right opportunity appears, regardless of past achievements. It's a cold business philosophy, but one that has shaped countless championship contenders throughout NBA history. Boston's front office now finds itself balancing those competing ideas while also navigating one of the most demanding financial systems the league has ever introduced. Building a contender is no longer just about identifying talent. It requires constant planning around contracts, roster depth, future draft assets, and salary restrictions that become harsher with every passing season. Those realities explain why trade speculation often grows louder during uncertain periods, not because a move is guaranteed, but because analysts know difficult conversations are inevitable behind closed doors. Through all the noise, Brown has maintained the same mindset that defined his career from the beginning. Rather than responding publicly to every rumor, he has consistently let his performances speak for themselves. That approach has earned respect from teammates, coaches, and opponents alike, reinforcing the image of a player committed to winning instead of feeding media headlines. Tatum has followed a similar path. Neither star has encouraged the speculation, and neither has suggested a desire to split apart after everything they have built together. Their focus has remained on basketball, even as debates continue to dominate television shows, podcasts, and social media discussions. That silence has only increased curiosity because fans naturally search for hidden meaning whenever information is limited. Some interpret it as confidence that nothing dramatic is coming. Others believe major organizations always keep sensitive plans private until the right moment arrives. The truth is that only a small group inside the Celtics truly knows what conversations are taking place, and they have every reason to keep those discussions confidential while evaluating every possible path forward. Until an official decision emerges, the rumors will continue evolving with every new insider report, every league source, and every unexpected development across the NBA landscape. One statement can spark another wave of theories, just as Windhorst's observation transformed an ordinary discussion into one of the offseason's hottest talking points. Whether Brown remains in Boston for years to come or the franchise eventually makes a shocking move, one thing is already clear. This story has become far bigger than a single trade rumor. It now represents the difficult choices every championship organization eventually faces when success, loyalty, injuries, and financial pressure collide. And with the offseason still unfolding, the next major update could arrive when nobody sees it coming. As the offseason continues to unfold, one reality keeps becoming clearer. Every headline surrounding the Celtics is being viewed through the lens of uncertainty. That uncertainty isn't the result of one insider's opinion alone. It's the combination of Tatum's recovery timeline, the league's tougher financial rules, and Boston's responsibility to remain a championship contender for years to come. Those three factors have created the perfect environment for speculation, allowing every comment from respected reporters to generate massive discussions across the basketball world. Yet separating possibility from probability is where things become most important. At this stage, there is still no official evidence that Boston has decided to move Jaylen Brown or that a blockbuster trade is actively being negotiated. The conversations dominating social media are driven by hypothetical scenarios, league-wide financial realities, and the belief that every front office must evaluate every option, no matter how uncomfortable it may seem. That's exactly why Windhorst's remarks attracted so much attention. They weren't presented as a leaked trade plan. Instead, they offered insight into how modern NBA organizations often operate when franchise-defining decisions are on the table. In today's league, communication between executives and superstar players has become more valuable than ever. Teams invest years building around elite talent, and maintaining trust within that relationship can influence the direction of an entire organization. If Boston ever reached the point of considering a move involving Brown, many observers believe conversations with Tatum would naturally be part of that process. Not because he would make the final decision, but because his perspective as the franchise cornerstone would matter. That distinction is critical, yet it's also the part many online discussions overlook. The difference between being consulted and being in control is enormous, and understanding that difference helps explain why this story has generated so many conflicting interpretations. Some fans immediately view the comments as proof that a trade was inevitable. Others dismiss the entire debate as off-season noise designed to fill the news cycle until basketball returns. The reality probably exists somewhere between those extremes. Championship organizations constantly prepare for multiple futures at the same time. They evaluate players, explore possibilities, protect flexibility, and monitor the market without committing to dramatic changes unless the right circumstances appear. Boston has built one of the NBA's strongest reputations by thinking strategically rather than emotionally. That disciplined approach helped transform years of playoff disappointment into championship success. It also means every important decision will likely be measured carefully instead of being driven by outside pressure or social media trends. Brown's legacy in Boston is already significant, and Tatum's importance to the franchise is equally undeniable. Together, they helped redefine expectations, silence critics, and deliver the ultimate prize to one of basketball's most passionate fan bases. Breaking apart that partnership would require extraordinary reasoning, not simply a wave of online speculation. Until something official changes, the Celtics remain a team built around elite talent, championship ambitions, and the belief that their window to compete has not completely closed. Still, the NBA has a way of producing unexpected twists when the least amount of attention is being paid. One phone call, one opportunity, or one unforeseen development can alter the course of an entire franchise overnight. That's exactly why this story continues to captivate fans across the league, because everyone knows that in the NBA, today's rumor can become tomorrow's reality, while today's certainty can disappear just as quickly. For now, all eyes remain on Boston as the organization quietly prepares for its next chapter. Whether the future brings continuity or change, the decisions made over the coming months could shape the Celtics for years to come. And until those answers finally arrive, the debate surrounding Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, and Boston's championship future is far from over. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next massive NBA update, because the biggest stories are often the ones nobody sees coming.